Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for Knowledgeable, a roundtable on special needs planning and resources. My name is Steph Conti, and I'll serve as the panel moderator for today. No matter where you are in your planning journey, having the knowledge of saving, planning, and the available resources is crucial. With today's roundtable, we'll highlight the key benefits of ABLE accounts while also diving deeper into the specifics of special needs resources and financial planning. We want to arm you all with what you need to be knowledgeable on long-term planning and how to get started. I could not be more thrilled for our lineup this morning, a team of advocates and experts with decades of experience and who are passionate about helping individuals and families gain independence and save for a better life experience. Today, I'm joined by Able United Director John Finch.
Good morning.
Owner of Friedman Elder Law Department, Heidi Friedman. Hi, Heidi. And Training and Staff Development Director at 211 Broward, Billie Morgan. Hi,
Hello.
Billie. Thank you all for being here. If you have any questions for our panelists, please input them in the question box that you'll see in the control panel on the right of your screen. And I know we wanted to get started with a couple of polls to gauge our attendees' prior knowledge on the subject. John, do you want to get started with that?
Yeah, that'd be great. And so this kind of help us as we dive into these conversations, ask a couple poll questions to get your thoughts and to kind of see where you guys at. First off is, have you heard of 211? This would be great information. Give everybody a few seconds to get their vote in. Good percentage of you are voting. I'll give everybody another couple seconds. All right, that's good. So I'll share this with the group so Billie can see as well. So, about a third yes, 2/3 no. So this would be a great opportunity.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we'll let Billie talk first, but then we'll go through, I'll throw the next poll question up here shortly.
Okay, Billie, let's start with you then. Can you talk to us a little bit about the special needs care system in Florida as a whole and some of the challenges that families may experience?
Okay, so we at 211 are the resource to be able to help families in Florida and beyond. It's in 98% of the nation. And our particular department actually helps families navigate this complex system of care. The challenges are vast. The needs are great for a lot of families. And so some of those major areas that we want to make sure that families know about are, and I will talk about them now, or if you want me to just do a little platform, I will start there. So this is the number to call when you don't know the number to call. So
there you go.
To start with, advocacy is one of the most important things that you need as a parent, to make sure that you know where to go and connect with other parents and caregivers that also have those resources. And I think that's so important, and that's probably the first platform for you to be able to link to.
And can you tell us where 211 Special Needs Connections comes into the fold?
And that's where we start, is that we want to make sure families know how to reach us. And now I see that more than half of you have not heard of this number to call when you don't know the number to call. So I've got my work cut out for me to make sure that you can help spread the word about this resource. It's a 24-hour helpline. Anywhere in Florida you are, you can dial 211 and get connected to a specialist, somebody who can help you. And particularly here in the South Florida area where we are, we have specialists that can help those families kind of hold that family's hand to find and connect to the essential resources that a parent needs. We have been around for, and this program has been around for over 10 years. 15, as a matter of fact, we're just coming up on that. And what we found was that parents would say, why didn't I hear about you when my child was 6? Why didn't I hear about you when my child was transitioning into adulthood? And we're just glad that we have an opportunity to tell you about this free resource, and it's a nonprofit organization and they're operated all over Florida. So make sure that you do know about that number. And
Wonderful.
the website, and they have text and chat, and you can go to 211.org if you want to find your local one.
Perfect. John, let's turn to you. So you've been an advocate in this community for several years, previously been at the ARC of Florida. In your opinion, how have things changed for the disability community?
Thanks, Steph, and thank you all for joining us this morning to talk about resources and disabilities. And so, yeah, I was fortunate. My prior tenure before becoming the Able United director was to work with the ARC of Florida, which is a statewide advocacy organization for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And I think one of the biggest pieces that have changed is just the focus on person-centered planning. But with that also comes the ability to start saving, which historically has been told not to do. It was actually a detriment to a family if they started saving for their loved one or putting money aside in that individual's name, and then they turned 18 and come to find out they wouldn't be eligible for any of the benefit programs that they could be eligible for because they had more than $2,000 in assets. And so, but through the hard work of many of the parents probably on this call and others that are saying, hey, why isn't there a way that I can at least start preparing for tomorrow, whatever that may be, whether that be college or transitioning to living independently or employment, that there's a way for them to start saving. And so thanks to the Achieving a Better Life Experience Act that passed back in, oh my gosh, 2014, and then each state had to kind of set up their own program. And here in Florida, we launched Able United in 2016. And what's great is what the state of Florida did was saying, hey, why don't we put this program under Florida Prepaid College Board, which is an entity that's helped over 1 million families save for higher education expenses, is now helping the disability community to save for what we call qualified disability expenses, but anything that's going to help improve or maintain somebody's health, independence, or quality of life. So just a lot of movement in focusing on that individual and how we can put the necessary supports around them to have them achieve a better life experience, which ABLE stands for.
That's wonderful. And I know you touched on it a little bit in your introduction, but why do you think it's important to have a good understanding of the basics of financial planning?
Right. So thinking about the basics, if you looked around, there's what they call, what they say, what's the old saying, there's no free lunch, right? Everything costs money. So whether that be I'm looking to see upcoming school shopping and or want to go on vacation, or just want to become a more independent person living on their own, whatever that case may be, it usually requires resources. And historically, $2,000 really didn't get you far. And so now with the ABLE account to allow individuals to save more than that, in talking about not just for young children, which is where, historically that's kind of where this grassroots movement started. But when it passed, it allowed individuals, regardless of their age, as long as their diagnosis occurred prior to age 26, to start putting extra cash aside or having family and friends assist them without negatively impacting benefits they may receive. And even more so is it allows people that maybe they're not on benefit programs, maybe they're working full time, they can actually utilize this account almost like a secondary retirement account. And then one of those key advantages of having this funds grow tax-free. So just a lot of benefits thinking about how ABLE accounts can help families and help individuals really achieve whatever their dreams are.
That's wonderful. Heidi, let's transition to you. You are a board certified elder law attorney with extensive experience in elder law, Medicaid, estate planning, and asset protection. I know we wanted to run a quick poll, but before we jump into your questions, John, if you want to get that started.
Yeah, have you completed your estate planning? I think that's a loaded question there. And as we talk about, some people might even know what that terminology estate planning is. So I think Heidi's going to tackle all of that and hopefully get a good baseline of where everybody's at on the call today. I'll give everybody a few more seconds to get their answer in. And don't be shy. These are anonymous, so we don't know if you hit yes or no. You don't want to be intimidating that way. All right, we'll go ahead and share this with the group. So, so similar to 211, right? About a third yes and 2/3 no. So we have our work cut out today. This is great, and I love this platform. So we'll have plenty of time for Q&A at the end too. So go ahead.
And I'll tell you what is so interesting about that, because so first of all, thank you for having me. You know, this is really very near and dear to my heart. Not only am I an elder law attorney and deal with this in my work world, I'm also a parent of a child with special needs. He's 22. He just turned 22 in January. And I will say, Billie, I never heard of 211 until I actually got into this world. So I'm so happy that this is out there. I mean, I had no idea that there was this free service that I could call with all those horrible nights in the middle of the night when I woke up worrying about what I was supposed to do. So I think 211 is amazing. And also, obviously, my son was there before the whole ABLE account came out. So I was dealing with other family members who had children or young adults that had special needs. And unfortunately, at that point, there was no account or anything that we could give that individual some control over their money. So the ABLE account was a godsend for a lot of young adults with special needs, or even adults with special needs. So I just wanted to kind of start off with that. This is really something that I also deal with on a personal level. I know that a lot of people out there don't have their estate plan. And what's interesting about that is I can guarantee you that most of you have heard of a special needs trust and think, oh yes, I need to do that for my child. But if you're anything like me, I was basically the shoemaker whose children had no shoes. When my son turned 18 years old, I looked and went, wow, I haven't done a special needs trust for him. So it was kind of this eye-opening experience for me. And I had to go through the whole Social Security process and get all of that for him. So it was a very eye-opening experience for me, being on the consumer side versus being on the professional side. So the question is, why do you need an estate plan? And what is an estate plan? So anybody and everybody should have an estate plan. And why is that? It's because if you don't have an estate plan, you have not actually protected your family. I mean, a lot of people think, oh, I don't have a big enough estate. Estate is like that's just the word. You need to have an estate plan, because what happens if something happens to you? And if anything, if this whole pandemic hasn't taught us all how vulnerable we all are, then nothing will. And what do I mean by that? We've had young people, old people, it has hit everybody, right? People that would never have expected to become disabled or to have died at such young ages. So it's really important that if you have children, or you have especially a child with special needs, that you have the proper estate plan to set them up and to protect them in the event that something does happen to you. Many people ask, how do I get started? What do I do? The best thing really and truly is to contact an attorney. I have had people who have tried to do it with these online documents and stuff like that, but your estate plan is not the time when you just don't want to spend the money to do what is proper and right, because if it's not done right, there are a lot of more financial consequences in the end. So what does the estate plan consist of? As a parent with child for special needs, you need to have your will. You need to have a third-party special needs trust. So when you're talking about special needs trust, there are two different kinds, right? You got your first-party special needs trust and your third-party special needs trust. The first-party special needs trust is actually for money that is in the disabled individual's name alone. So for example, if there is an inheritance that somebody did not set up properly and now goes into your child's name, or if there was a judgment, maybe there was an accident or a medical malpractice and now they've got money in their name. Or, you know what, you're right, we started saving money. We didn't know. We started saving all this money for my son. We put it in an account in his name, which was not the smartest thing. And so now what did we have to do? We had to transfer it over to a first party special needs trust. So if you are a parent, a third-party special needs trust is actually a much better vehicle for that money. It's for money for the third-party special needs trust is used for other people's money other than the individual. The difference between the two of them, a first-party special needs trust and a third-party special needs trust, one of the biggest differences is that in a first-party special needs trust, upon the death of the disabled individual, whatever money's left in there gets paid back to the state of Florida, dollar for dollar, what they've paid out for your child. So there's a payback. In a third-party special needs trust, there is no payback. Additionally, first-party special needs trusts are a lot more limited in what you can use the money for to spend it on. If you use your first-party special needs trust to spend for food or shelter, you will affect your child's SSI payment. And let's face it, that SSI payment is not that much right now. I mean, what is it like? I think my son gets $867 a month, and that's the top. How they think that anybody is going to live on food and shelter for $867 a month, I don't know, but that's what your SSI payment is right now. The other piece of your estate planning is that ABLE account. And a lot of people ask me, do I need an ABLE account and a special needs trust? And the answer is yes. And the reason why is because, first of all, John, like you said, you can grow the ABLE account tax-free. So that's a really big plus versus the first party special needs trust. Anything that goes in there is taxable. So you can grow it tax-free. The second thing is that the ABLE account allows you to pay for a lot more than the first party special needs trust. There are a lot more what we call qualified disability expenses that can be paid for through the ABLE account that you can't pay for through the first party special needs trust. And the third thing really and truly is who can control and who can use those dollars. Under a first party special needs trust, it's expensive. You have to hire a trustee. I mean, I know a lot of people try to put their other child or some other, family member as the trustee of a special needs trust, but you got to be really careful with that because again, that trustee really has to know what they can use those dollars for. So a lot of times it's better to hire a professional. So it costs money to have a first party special needs trust. Plus getting the money is not quite as easy. In an ABLE account, my child can actually have a debit card. He can go wherever he wants and use that money. In a first party special needs trust, he can't. Now, a lot of people say, well, why do I need a first party special needs trust then if the ABLE account is so much better? And it's because, again, the ABLE accounts have limits, right? So there you've got limits on how much money you can put in there. You've got limits on how much money you can grow. So that's the reason why using both of these and throwing in your third party special needs trust is so important to complete your full estate plan.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Heidi. Billie, let's turn to you for a moment. What advice do you give parents that have just received a diagnosis and are unsure of what to do next? What advice would you have given Heidi if you could all those years ago?
You mean except for the fact that they gave me a thing and said, go over to this agency and figure out what to do? Yeah, that's kind of what happened with us.
Yeah.
Right. It's overwhelming when you get that news. And sometimes that news comes a little too late. It's usually that wait and see that a lot of physicians sometimes, or family members, or culturally, sometimes it's that wait and see kind of mentality that can delay early interventions are going to be so important. So that resource was so great that Heidi received when she got her diagnosis, because that is the first step to getting therapy supports and making sure that early intervention happens. If there is a concern, even down the road, make sure you connect to therapists and physicians and medical practitioners so that you can get those diagnoses. So the first thing I would say for a new diagnosis is not only get connected to resources like Early Steps, but also connect to other parents. Start joining groups. If you reach us at 211, we'll be able to potentially connect you to support groups just for your child's disability. And honestly, most parents are more powerful, I find, if they have another parent who's going through it or has been through it and can wrap their arms around you and say, hey, I've navigated this. And so wonderful advocates out there, wonderful moms and dads out there that are really fighting that fight to make sure that their children get a fair shake. So linking them up later as well to support groups, but also social recreational, making sure all your ducks in a row for therapy. There's a whole lot of things to prepare for. So the first step is connect.
Can I know that I just want to say, Billie, I just want people to know, parents to know. I know when Jeremy was born, I felt very alone. Most of my family, friends, whatever, had typical children. I was trying to do the typical mommy and me classes, right? And it was very challenging. And it wasn't until I found a group with other parents who had children with special needs that I finally felt like I had found a home. And though I have two very close friends who I met during that are still friends, and we're talking 21 years later. So I agree with you. A support group, even though you think that I'm not that person, it's so important.
I love that. And then also what you've learned, you can share with other parents. So if you think that you might not need it, maybe there's a parent out there that needs you.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Thank you, Billie. John, let's switch to you. What would you say to individuals and families who are unsure of when the right time is to open an ABLE account?
Right. I think one of the things we hear repeatedly is now, right? Better if it was yesterday. But it's always the putting the feet to the pavement and actually getting it done. And so I should tell individuals the best time to start is now. And we try to here as Florida's ABLE program to really make it the least amount of resistance, an effort to actually open an account. I used to say, if you can open a Facebook account or some other social media account, you can probably open an ABLE account. Really, it's just identifying, who you are, who the individual that's gonna, that individual, the beneficiary, the person with the disability, their contact information. You do have to have a bank account to make a minimum $25 deposit. Then you get to choose if you want to invest or save that. The whole process now takes about 15 minutes. And what's great is due to the final regulations that the Treasury put out. So take a step back. So ABLE accounts are IRS accounts. They're IRS sanctioned accounts. So each state has to kind of set them up. It has to play by federal rules. And so with that, we kind of wanted some additional advice on how the states are supposed to run these accounts. They call those regulations. And so for ABLE here, generally they said, well, restricted on just having a power of attorney or a guardian and the individual themselves as the only individuals that can open the account is pretty restrictive. And so they took that advice and actually broadened it to include parent, a grandparent, sibling, a spouse, even somebody serving as a representative payee under Social Security Administration to establish an ABLE account. And so really kind of opens the floodgates on who can open the account, which is going to be beneficial. Additionally, back in December, we went back to a self-certification model. Prior to that, if you're opening this on behalf, an ABLE account on behalf of an adult beneficiary, we're going to request you to submit power of attorney documents or guardianship paperwork. We went back to saying, hey, you just self-certify, saying that you attest that you have those documents, that you're going to maintain them. You don't have to submit them anymore. So hopefully that will quicken the enrollment process. But really, it's getting started now. AbleUnited.com is our website. As Heidi attested to, just getting it started, just getting it open, and then having that option to say, when can I fund it? How can I fund it? Some of the great features that our program offers is the ability to have a unique gifting page, so family and friends can help post that. I see every once in a while, I'll see somebody on social media post, hey, hey, my birthday's coming up, just put money into my ABLE account, and you can kind of do that. So that's pretty a unique feature without having to, count it as income if you were on some kind of benefit programs that somebody just gave you money. So having people fund your ABLE account that way. And one of the things I wanted to show that Steph prompted me as a reminder, I was going to share kind of the idea of just being able to get started. And that's not what I wanted to share. You get all these buttons here, and they don't tell you how to do it. So this is just a little handy dandy chart that we have that kind of shows, what it looks like if you just start putting in $25 a month or whatever you're able to, that and having that potential for tax-free earnings on top of that, where just $25 a month, 5-10 years down the road, you could have $3,000-4,000, or even more. And so I think that's just the key to shows that compound interest can add up, and that those funds could be used when you need to, and hopefully it'll make your money go further. So just kind of that little background on how individuals can utilize this account. and who all can help them establish an ABLE account to really start saving for those qualified disability expenses.
That's great. Thank you, John. Heidi, let's turn back to you. Can you share a little bit about your experience in opening an ABLE account, and also that kind of combination that you mentioned of having the special needs trust and an ABLE account and how it can fund an ABLE account?
Sure, absolutely. So I opened an ABLE account for Jeremy when it first came out. I think, you know what, John, I don't remember what the year was either when that first came out.
Yeah,
And
2016.
yeah, I think 2016. So my son was 16 or he was 16. It literally took me, I think, 15 minutes on the computer to do it. The thing about it is that, you know, an ABLE account is like a 529 account. So for those of you who have other children that have a 529 account, you'll know that an ABLE account is, you know, you'll understand what that means, a 529 account. So I had one for obviously, you know, I have 2 kids. So my youngest son, we started a 529 account. And for Jeremy initially, oh, that's my son with special needs. For Jeremy initially, we had started a 529 account and then obviously realized that that was not going to be able to be money that we were going to be able to use for that purpose. So at that time, we were able to switch it over to the ABLE account. So opening up an ABLE account is very easy to do. There are, like I said, there are limits of what you can put into it. As of 2022, the new limit for anybody to contribute to the ABLE account is $16,000. And if you'll realize, that is kind of the same amount as the gifting, right? You can gift $16,000 to whoever you want, and it won't affect your gift or inheritance tax exclusion. So it's a $16,000 a year that you can put into the ABLE account. And also the individual, him or herself, can put in, I think it's $12,880. So you can literally put in a total of almost $29,000 into your ABLE account every year. There are some restrictions. So if you can grow the ABLE account to up to $100,000 without it affecting SSI. And you can actually grow the ABLE account up to the amount of the 529 accounts, which in a lot of states is anywhere from $300,000 to $500,000.
Yeah,
so,
in Florida, it's 418,000. So
okay, so you can grow to that amount. So the reason why, again, you need both the third-party special needs trust through your estate planning plus the ABLE account is because the ABLE account does have those limits. So you are going to want to have your third-party special needs trust for anything over and above that. The other thing about ABLE accounts, or the other restrictions, is you can only put cash in there. So you can't put a property, you can't put, you know, stocks, bonds, anything like that into the ABLE account. So as a parent, you basically need 2 different vehicles to be able to really control, to really protect your child who has special needs. And the last thing you want to do is be able to put it into, you know, your child's name, his or her, you know, individual name. But also a lot of times I'll come up across families that say, oh, well, I'll just give it to my typical child who has special needs, who does not have special needs. And I try to counsel against that. And the reason why is because right now it might sound like a great idea. I got a 17-year-old son who is typical and my 22-year-old son who has special needs. And my hope and my prayer is that my 17-year-old will always watch out for his brother. But at the end of the day, my 17-year-old, hopefully, God willing, has his own life, gets married, has his own children, has whatever. And so while I want him to always be involved in his brother's life, I don't want to put him responsible for paying everything, making sure he's taking care of all of that. So it's really important to have both of those accounts.
Thank you, Heidi. Thank you for sharing your experience. John, let's turn back to you. So now that funds are in an ABLE account, can you talk to us about their flexibility and how individuals can withdraw and spend money?
Yeah, but before that, can I put Billie, you know, for those that are on here today, don't know, we actually have a kind of a script that we follow, but if you know my personality, I kind of like to go off script. So Billie, I want to see if we can do a little role playing here, like some hypothetical situations. Let's say, and hopefully you're ready for this. So let's say, you know, I'm a new parent, I have a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, they were diagnosed at birth with Down syndrome, for example. I'm ready to start, okay, I need to start doing something. and I decide, okay, I'm going to call 211. So just hypothetically, what kind of services or what kind of support would you provide that individual or that family, myself, and helping me guide the resources that are out there?
I appreciate that. First and foremost, we are empathic listeners. All of our counselors are trained in the mental health field, and we have many, many hours before we even get to that point. And also, our specialists are knowledgeable about many of those aspects about special needs and know those nuances. We're not saying we are, if we don't know, what we're going to do is link you to those who can give you the nitty-gritty details. So when a parent of a young child calls, well, first and foremost, make sure that they're emotionally supported and make sure that, they're ready for that information. You also want to be mindful not to overload them with information. So if you say, here are the 17 resources you need to get set up, that's going to be overwhelming. So it's really important that what we do is follow up with those families and make sure that we are taking those steps by step so that they can link to the appropriate agencies that they need to be linked to. Most importantly, early intervention, like Ed mentioned earlier. Support groups then, look up all these different types of rehabilitation therapies and learn about them. And honestly, I think that the best thing is other caregivers that are navigating through this or have been through this is going to help them. Agencies like Family Network on Disability, Early Steps, CARD are some of the foremost places that can kind of help, depending on the circumstance, for resources, depending on the age too. So that is just kind of like the beginnings. And respite care is another thing I would want to mention to make sure that, because a caregiver needs to make time for themselves so that they can focus on what they need to focus on. And it's not selfish to have self-care. So that's what respite's all about too. And if you want to learn about those and other things, just call us at 211 and say, hey, I heard about respite. What is that? Am I eligible for it? We can tell you more about it and we can help you navigate that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so I love it too. It's based, you kind of meet the parent where they're at too, and so it's depending on the age and the age of the individual they're trying to serve. But I love that you guys take that initiative to do the mental health kind of check and serve. I mean, it's just so important in today's fast-paced world. So that's awesome. But going back to Steph's original question, and so thank you for letting me go off topic, and talking about just how you use the funds in an ABLE account, right? You start putting money in there, maybe it's been sitting there for a couple of years, and you're saying, okay, what can I actually use those funds on, right? And we get more questions, I think, about qualified disability expenses than probably anything else. And the reason why is because it's so flexible. The Treasury actually said that it's supposed to be construed broadly, and so they gave 13 broad categories to include anything from medical, health, legal, financial, oversight and monitoring, transportation, even funeral and burial. So it's a pretty broad, but then they also follow that up with, daily living expenses. So they provide one example, and they said, let's say you had an individual who was autistic or needed help just navigating or communicating in their community, then a cell phone and a cell phone plan would be a qualified disability expenses. And so with that kind of broad target, we usually tell individuals it's easier to say what not to do with the funds, like don't give the funds away, don't go buy tobacco, alcohol, or gambling with the money or anything illegal. So those sort of things I would shy away with. But, if you're using it to say, hey, we want to go on a vacation with the family and they want to help pay their way, or maybe they need some additional services to help them get employed, or maybe they want to set up a special needs trust. Those funds could be used out of an ABLE account to pay for those fees. And so we see a lot. It's pretty cool. As mentioned earlier, Heidi kind of alluded to, is that we have a preloadable debit card. That's a Visa loadable card, so people can put a certain amount on there each month or however much they want to put on there. And then those can be used anywhere Visa is accepted. And it's pretty cool. We get a monthly kind of report on where people are using them. So a lot of online shopping, a lot of fast food restaurants, but we also see a lot of medical as well, where people are going to pay their copay or their deductible with their ABLE United card, and so that's kind of cool. But yeah, it's pretty broad, but we get specific questions. And if you go to our website, we have some great stories and testimonials of individuals who have utilized the funds in their account, from people putting down payments on vehicles to one lady who uses it to for her small business, and so it's just pretty cool how people are using these ABLE accounts. But how you get those funds out, pretty easy. Like I said, that preloadable card, You can request a check to be sent to you or to a third party, or you can make an electronic transfer back to a connected account, like a bank account, savings, or checking, and then use it that way. So pretty flexible, pretty broad. And as long as you keep those receipts, because when you do make a withdrawal, it will initiate a tax form, because remember, these are tax advantage accounts, and those tax forms will basically say, hey, you took a withdrawal from your ABLE account, how much of that withdrawal was earnings, and then just keep that for your tax purposes. It's not going to make you have to file for taxes, but it's just in case the IRS was to ever ask, that you would have that documentation available.
Perfect. Thank you, John. So as Heidi alluded to, over the past 2 years, we've definitely all learned about the importance of saving for the unexpected. Billie, what do you think the value is for individuals with disabilities being able to save?
Oh, I myself am writing down some great tips here. I'm so glad everybody's here to hear this information. Those nuances definitely connect to Able United and advocates, because you're going to be able to learn that. So it's about freedom. To me, Able United is equivalent to freedom, more freedom to be able to use the money where it needs to be used. And I think that's phenomenal. And that is really what it's all about here, right? We want to have independence for our children. And this is one of those many aspects that are a piece of that puzzle to make sure we do have that.
Right, exactly. Thank you, Billie. And Heidi, same question for you. What do you think the value is for individuals with disabilities to be able to save?
Well, I mean, it's the same value for anybody who's able to save, right? I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in our future. And if anything, the last 2 years has really shown we just don't know what's going to come up. What are we going to need? So it's a value saving. If you can save anything for, regardless of whether you have disabilities or not, obviously that's always going to be a very valuable thing. But for an individual with disabilities, again, like I said, you know, I have my son he's 22 years old. If all he had was Social Security and Medicaid, you're talking $867. And he works he works 2 days a week at Wendy's, and he's very excited about doing that, but he would never be able to support himself on that kind of money. So it's so important to be able to save money for a rainy day. What's going to happen? What kind, you know, when he becomes more of an adult and he moves out eventually, like we all hope our children will eventually do. Believe me, I know that there are plenty of parents who have typical children that are still living with them, trust me. But, you know, the hope is that our children eventually become more independent and able to do that. You know, if we want to be able to bring in an aid for him, the expense of long-term care is overwhelming. People don't even realize the expense. So saving for those kinds of expenses is just so important. And I just want to touch on something that John said about the ABLE account and the qualified, you know, disability expenses. Another really important thing that people have to understand is when you put money into your first party or your third party special needs trust, you can only use those dollars based on what that trust actually says you can use those dollars for. So if you have a trust, it does not allow you to use dollars to pay for, you know, a companion to go on a trip with your individual, you know, your child or whatever. You can't use those dollars for that. So that's another really great thing about using both of these vehicles.
Wonderful. Thank you, Heidi. Well, I know that we've been getting a ton of questions in the chat, and we also received so many great questions in advance of the webinar. So I think it's time now to turn and to try to address a few of these. John, let's start with you. And I think this is one of the most frequently asked questions that we get regarding ABLE and Medicaid payback. So what happens in the event of the death of a beneficiary?
Yeah, it's a good question. And after, you know, what can I use the funds for? And then it's like, well, what happens if they pass away and there's funds left over? And so what's interesting is that the state of Florida actually passed legislation to state that any leftover funds in the estate or in the ABLE account after all outstanding qualified disability expenses are paid, including funeral and burial, will ultimately go to the estate of the beneficiary. And so although Medicaid can't file a claim directly on an ABLE account, it still would file it on the estate. if they meet the qualifications of being 55 and older, not having surviving spouse or a child with a disability that they're cared for. So there's some additional rules, but typically with ABLE accounts and some of the restrictions on how much money you can have on there, hopefully that most of the funds are expensed or part of that estate planning on how you're using your ABLE account are almost empty, and then after you pay funeral and burial, that there's no funds left. But we've had a couple of situations where individuals have passed. We usually end up getting a letter from an attorney that's serving as a personal representative on the estate, or somebody in that capacity, and they usually direct us on how to distribute those funds. And so that's typically what happens when a beneficiary passes away.
Perfect. Thank you, John. Heidi, a question for you. What are the dangers of not having a plan in place at all?
Well, the dangers of not having a plan in place is that when you die, your family member is not taken care of. Unfortunately, what I see a lot, because I do a lot of elder law as well, so I deal with a lot of seniors who have had children who had special needs, that those children, I call them children, are in their 60s, and they're not capable of living on their own, and the parent has not really taken the time to make sure that there are plans in place for when that parent dies. And I have come across, unfortunately, individuals who are between the age of 55, 65, where they're kind of in this untapped area where their parent has now died and they don't have enough money to live where they're living anymore. They don't have the supports of being able to remain there. So what are their options? Their options are either to move into a group home if they can find one that's comfortable, or sometimes they even have to go into a nursing home because they haven't been taken care of. So it's really very important to make sure that your estate plan is set up. It gives peace of mind. If anything else, it will give you a peace of mind to know that in the event something happens to you, your child is taken care of. He or she is going to be, there's going to be the right person to step in to take for that. That alone can cause families so much aggravation and pain. Who's going to take care of my loved one? Putting together documents to say, what does my loved one like and not like? What kind of activities will they do? There's just so much that you need to do. It's, as a parent, it's so hard to think about yourself not being there for your child. So if you're going to be there for them during life, you need to actually be there for them in the event of your death. And that's why it's so important to make sure that you've set up your estate plan.
Thank you, Heidi. Billie, we have a question for you. How can 211 early intervention care coordinators help families?
And essentially what I usually say is that it's a complex system and we need some guidance in navigating that system. Now, where to begin is kind of where some parents call us because they just got the diagnosis, and some parents call us because somebody had told them about, this resource, and they were like, my child's 16, what do I need to prepare for it? They will talk about guardianship and other, resources as well. So it's broad, it's individualized to answer your question. So what we do is kind of meet you where you're at and help you navigate what you need navigating. If some parents are like, no, I know all about the IEP, I go to it, I'm engaged, or, if it's the early part of the IEP, what is that like? We might also suggest to you, make sure you are keeping yourself organized, have a binder of all those things that you need to know and be prepared to respond to. And educating somebody on how to advocate and how to build bridges with the people that you're working with, that are working with your child, is going to pay off. I know that sometimes we always are fighting, and we want what's best for our child, but we have to also see where we can build bridges and get that support. It's individualized. So those are conversations that we have and other conversations as well. And most importantly, tap into what resources are out there. And there are resources in every part and every corner of this area.
Perfect. Thank you. And John, as we continue this conversation about planning and all of the aspects involved. Can you talk to us a little bit about ABLE accounts and how they consider income if contributions are considered?
Yeah, that's a good key point, because I think there's some confusion where if the beneficiary is working, they put their own money in, it doesn't count as income. And so ABLE accounts generally are what they call a resource sheltering tool. So when it comes to public benefit programs, they kind of look at two things: how much money somebody has on hand, resources, and then how much income, how much earnings they have, or how much benefit programs they're receiving income from, like maybe SSDI from their parents or child support, something like that. And so ABLE, although it can accept those incomes, SSDI, child support, it still counts as income in the scheme of things. So for the IRS purposes or for public benefit reporting, ABLE, on the other hand, protects the asset limit, the $2,000 limit, how much cash you can have on hand. So that's important to know. But if a friend, a family member says, okay, I'm going to put $100 into your ABLE account, that would not count as income towards the individual. But in Heidi's example, her son's working at Wendy's, he puts his paycheck into his ABLE account, that would still count as income purposes.
Right. Perfect. Thank you for clarifying. So these next couple of questions really, kind of directed to any of you, so feel free to speak up. The first one is in regard to services available specifically for a teenager with autism and how they can project what to apply for in advance with little or no guidance.
That's a two-parter.
Yeah.
I'll take one part of it. It's make sure that he has a transition IEP in place. You can actually start that at 14. That's something we would tell you, to make sure that you talk to your ESE specialist at your school to make sure that he has goals that are toward meaningful employment or post-secondary plans. So that is something that you want to make sure is in place. And so that's one part. Who wants to tackle the other half?
What was the other half?
Services available.
One more time.
The question was, how can you project what to apply for in advance?
You mean for government benefits? So basically the government benefits that are there, one of the interesting things that I think that hits a lot of parents with kids with special needs is that when they turn 18, they're adults. Mm-hmm. And, I'll hear it all the time. Yeah, but he doesn't think like an adult. He doesn't act like an adult. He doesn't have the capacity of an adult. That doesn't matter. It's age. So once you turn 18 and once your child turns 18, there are several things that you have to make sure that you have in place. Number one is whether it's a guardian advocacy or it's a durable power of attorney. And that's going to depend on your child and what they're capable of doing. For example, my son happens to be very high functioning. So we have a durable power of attorney for him. Now, on the other hand, he also can get on, online and buy certain things, and I can't control that, because what a durable power of attorney does is it allows us to act for him, but it doesn't remove any of his rights. So if he goes online and he purchases a car, he's done a couple of things that for us that we've kind of taken a step back and went, wait a second, Jeremy, you can't do this, but he's liable for that. Versus if you do a guardian advocacy where now the rights are removed and you as the parent now step in and that child does not have those rights anymore. So that's the first thing you're going to have to want to take into consideration. Additionally, when you're talking about that, again, people don't understand. My child turns 18. I can no longer make healthcare decisions for him. Mm-hmm. My son is capacitated and the doctor wants to give him a shot and he's going, no, I don't want that shot. Guess what? The doctor has to abide by what he says. So again, there's those kind of issues that you have to keep in mind when you start getting to the age where your son or daughter is turning 18. As for the government benefits that are there, there's the Social Security, SSI or SSDI. There's a lot of people that get those very confused. SSI is supplemental security income. It's for those individuals who are not going to be able to work and pay into the system their whole life. My son is working at let me make sure I have the right fast food place, Wendy's, because he'll be very upset. He's working at Wendy's, but he's never going to earn enough money to make you know, to pay into the system, or he will, maybe he will, but I'm just saying as of right now. So we want to make sure that there's not more than $2,000 in his name when he turns 18. We want to make sure that there are some other things that we do to make sure that he gets the full SSI benefit. And why do I say that? Is because if you're giving your child food and shelter, guess what? That's considered in-kind support, and it will cut the amount of money that he gets for SSI. Additionally, you want to make sure that they get at least $1 of SSI so that they can qualify for Medicaid insurance. I know right now with the Obamacare and all of that, that we can keep our children on our insurance. I think it's till the age of 26, but you want to make sure that your child can still qualify for Medicaid insurance. So these are things that you really need to start looking at and expecting right when they turn about 16, 17 years old. These are things that are going to be coming up.
Perfect.
Well said. A lot of information there. I hope folks are writing down this information, and I know some of you already know this information. When it comes to guardianships and accessing that, you have to also keep in mind there are some costs there. So anticipate that. That, like Heidi said, you know, I know there are some ways to do this on your own, but it might be best to make sure your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted, and get an advocate and somebody who understands guardianship very thoroughly.
And let me just step in and say that. So your guardian, there are two different kinds of guardianship. There's your guardian advocacy and your regular guardianship. The difference between the two is, first of all, the guardian advocacy, it's for individuals with special needs specifically, and it does not require the court to come up with a determination that the person is not capacitated, versus your typical guardian where there's 3 people that come and do an evaluation of the individual. They have to actually, the court actually has to declare them incapacitated and then assign the guardian. Guardian advocacies actually do not require attorneys, but your child does get assigned an attorney. So because anybody who's getting any of their rights removed they have the right to have an attorney there. We always recommend that you have an attorney anyway, because not only do you get to become or appointed as the guardian, but after that, there's a report every year that you have to submit. Every year you have to submit something. So we have clients that every year we make sure that we submit that report on behalf of them as a guardian.
Thank you, Heidi. So we are coming up to the end of our time together. Thank you again to our panelists, and I'll open up the floor if you all want to share, some final words. Billie, we'll start with you. If you want to share, one final piece of advice, and then also, of course, share that phone number and where people can access resources across the state.
Well, here is an easy to remember number. Just dial 211. You'll be routed like a cell phone tower to your nearest 211 and ask how they can help you. If you have a child with special needs, ask how they can help, or adult with special needs, because it is all ages that we serve here, veterans and seniors as well. Anybody who's a caregiver or beyond an individual that needs support, this is the number to call, and we'll be able to link you to resources in your community. So that 3-digit number, 211, easy to remember. And again, go to 211.org if you want to find local resources on your own. Everything's listed in the database right there at your fingertips, and you can chat with us there.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you, Billie. And Heidi, any final words from you or any final piece of advice that you'd like to share?
Sure. I mean, I just am a big advocate about being prepared. Make sure that you are prepared for your child for when that child turns 18. Make sure that, again, one of the other things that people do is, oh, I set up my estate plan when my son or daughter was 18 years old, and they don't look at it again for 40 years. So even if you have an estate plan, make sure that you're having it checked, or at least checking with an attorney every 5 to 6 years, or if there's any kind of family change or change in the environment or whatever, so that you make sure that your estate plan is up to date. Because there's nothing worse than having an estate plan that you did 30 years ago that doesn't work at the time that you die or you become incapacitated. So it's really important that you meet with an attorney that knows what they're doing. The other thing I always wanted to stress is this is not the time to go and find the attorney that does real estate, or the attorney that does, tickets because he's my best friend's boyfriend's husband's whatever. This is the time to really find an attorney that specializes or deals in this area of law. I always say it all the time. You would not go to your pediatrician for surgery, you know, and if you need an orthopedics? Why would you go to an attorney that doesn't do this area of law? So it's really important because the laws change all the time. People need to be updated all the time. So it's really important that if you do decide, and I do recommend it, that you do find an attorney that deals in this area of the law.
Beautiful. Thank you, Heidi. And John, turning it to you for any last words on those who are attending who don't have an ABLE account, consider opening one.
But before I do, I'm gonna wait for my lights to turn off. Heidi, you know, we get this question a lot. It's like, where do I find an attorney, right? And so usually I tell people, you know, check with their local bar association, the Florida bar. Both of those usually have places where you can go and find a local attorney. And correct me if I'm wrong, but typically it's elder law attorneys that usually do special needs trusts and kind of that estate planning, right? So that's kind of the realm.
Yeah, so when you are looking for an attorney that does this type of work, it's interesting, but we are considered elder law attorneys. There are board certified elder law attorneys. I happen to be one of them. We're a rare breed. There's only about 117 of us in the entire state of Florida that do this. Not that does elder law, don't get me wrong. I mean, that specialize in this area of law because we are board certified. So you can go on the Florida bar and look up board certified elder law attorneys. And the reason why it's the same is because it's all dealing with government benefits.
Yep. So that's awesome. But going back to the original question about, you know, why an ABLE account, and I think it goes back to why this program exists in the first place, right? You know, 15, well now 18 years ago, you know, families were like, hey, what can we do to start saving for the future? What can we start doing something now for tomorrow? And so that's really why ABLE came along in the first place. And so I encourage individuals, you know, take the 15 to 30 minutes tonight, you know, don't be like me and scroll through your social media preferred platform, but just take the time, sit down and just get it done. And then it's just, it's like mowing the grass, right? When you do something where you're like, you can see the instant effects of like, look, it looks better. That's how it feels like after you open an ABLE account. You get it done, you're like, I'm doing something, I've started the process. And then, you know, keep going from there. You know, talk to your state planning or the elder law attorney about setting it up. Call 211 to see what other resources are out there to kind of get you on the road. So, but just go and get it done, right? That's the goal for this year. But that's the final words I would say.
Steph, can I just say one thing? I just want to let everybody know if they want to reach out to us, I'm under the Friedman Elder Law Department. That's where they will find us. Our number is 954-866-1055, or also you can look us up under elderlawdept.com. I forgot to give my information, sorry.
That's fine. All right, well, again, thank you to all that attended today. We like to share that, you know, knowledge is power, and definitely for this webinar, we wanted you all to be knowledgeable. This session was recorded, so it will be posted on our YouTube channel in a week or so if you need to refer back to it. And if we didn't address your specific question during today's roundtable, feel free to reach out to us at info@ableunited.com, and we'll try to answer as many questions as we can. Thank you again to our panelists and for all of you for joining. We'll see you next time.
Thank you all.